Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I don't know what the situation is in St. Petersburg, but in my country, Belgium, or in the country I work in, France, test analysts, or analysts, business analysts, are often used as testers, or program managers, or project managers sometimes, okay? And is it the same here in Russia? Okay, so this presentation is for you, because originally I am a tester. I'm not a business analyst, okay? But I learned to become a business analyst because I needed to work together with the business side, understand them, and manage the testing project and the whole project as such in a decent way. And this is what this presentation is all about. So, we have a lot on our menu today. I hope you're hungry. But first of all, let me introduce myself. Who am I? As you can see, I'm a cute young boy, I'm 20. Don't believe me? Well, I have 20 years of experience, essentially in the field of testing. I'm managing a company that is a 30-people company delivering consultancy services in quality control. And actually, I have a lot of vice. I'm vice president of this company, and I'm also vice president of the local board, the French board, of a big organization called the ISTQB. Have you heard of the ISTQB? Yeah. So for those who haven't heard of the ISTQB is delivering certificates and best practice in the field of quality control, testing, actually. That is a worldwide organization, and with 51 local boards, including Russia, by the way, we deliver certificates at a certain moment in time. We certify people in the testing field, in the software quality field, right? That is about 600,000 exams worldwide and 450,000 certificate issued, right? 3 levels: foundation, advanced, and expert. And in this big organization, I'm the governance officer, okay? I used to be the vice, I'm now the governance officer, which means that I'm kind of quality control and police within the organization. But I'm also involved in 2 other schemes, one that you've just heard about, that is REQB, specialized in requirements engineering, and also IQBBA. And the question would be, why would a tester go to business analysis, IQBBA, specialist key, or requirements engineering, REQB? Well, just because I need to interface different type of people within the organization, and I need to speak the same language as these people. I need to understand them, and I need to get understood by these people. And this is why I want to get all my senior guys, all my test managers, certified in these schemes so that they can interface the whole organization. Okay, the first question, because this talk is about requirement, the first question is, why the hell do we need good requirements? Well, let me just show you a couple of examples.
Our company has a new strategic initiative to increase market penetration, maximize brand loyalty, and enhance intangible assets. In pursuit of these objectives, we started a new project which will require 7 red lines. I understand the company can help us in this matter.
Of course. Walter here will be the project manager. Walter, we can do this, can't we?
Yes, of course. Anderson here is our expert in all matters related to the drawing of red lines. We've brought him along today to share his professional.
Nice to meet you. Well, you all know me. This is Justine, our company's design specialist. Hello. We need you to draw 7 red lines, all of them strictly perpendicular. Some are green ink and some are transparent. Can you do that?
No, I'm afraid
Let's not push you any hasty answers, Anderson. The task has been set and needs to be carried out at the end of the day.
the term red line implies the colour of the line to be red. To draw a red line with green ink is, well, if it's not exactly impossible, it's pretty close to being impossible.
What does that even mean? Impossible.
possible there are some people, say, suffering from color blindness, for whom the color of the lines doesn't really make a difference. But I'm quite sure that the target audience of your project doesn't consist solely of such people.
So in principle, this is possible.
I'll simplify. A line as such can be drawn with absolutely any ink, but if you want to get a red line, you need to use red ink.
What if we draw them with blue ink?
It still won't work. If you use blue ink, you'll get blue lines. And what exactly did you mean when you talk about the transparent ink?
How to explain? I'm sure you know what transparent means.
Yes, but
And what a red line means. I hope I don't have to explain to you. But you need to draw a red line with transparent ink.
Could you describe what you imagine the end result would look like?
Come on, Anderson, what have we got? Keep it up.
Let's not waste our time with these unproductive quarrels. The task has been set, the task is plain and clear. Now, if you have any specific questions, then go ahead.
You're the expert.
All right, let's leave aside the color for the moment. You had something there also relating to perpendicularity.
Some lines all strictly perpendicular.
To what?
To everything amongst themselves. I assume you know what perpendicular lines are like.
Of course he does. He's an expert.
Two lines can be perpendicular. All seven can be simultaneously perpendicular to each other. I'll show you. This is a line, right?
Yes.
And another, is it perpendicular to the first line?
Well,
Yes, it is perpendicular.
exactly.
Wait, I'm not done. And the third one, is it perpendicular to the first line? Yes, it is. But it doesn't cross the second line. They're both parallel. Not perpendicular.
I suppose so.
There it is. Two lines can be perpendicular.
Can I have a pen? How about this?
This is a triangle. It's definitely not perpendicular lines. And there are three, not seven.
Why are they blue?
Indeed, I thought that myself.
I have a blue pen with me. This was just a demonstration.
That's the problem, your lines are blue, draw them with red ink.
Won't solve the problem.
Well, how do you know before you tried? Let's draw them with red ink. Let's see.
I don't have a red pen with me, but I'm completely certain that with red ink, the result will still be the same.
Didn't you tell us earlier you could only draw red lines with red ink? In fact, I've written that down here. And now I'm drawing with blue ink. Do you want us to call these red lines?
I think I understand. You're not talking about the colour now, right? You're talking about that, what do you call it,
Perpendicularity, yes!
That's it, now you've confused everyone. So what exactly is stopping us from doing this?
Geometry.
Just ignore it.
We have a task, 7 red lines. It's not 20, it's just 7. Anderson, I understand you're a specialist in a narrow field, you don't see the overall picture. But surely it's not a difficult task to draw some 7 lines.
Exactly. It's just a solution. Any fool can criticize. No offense. But you're an expert. You should know that.
Okay. Let me draw you two perfectly perpendicular red lines. And I will draw the rest with transparent ink. They'll be invisible, but I'll draw them.
Would this suit us? Yes, this will suit us. Yes, but at least a couple with blue ink. Oh, and I have another question, if I may. Can you draw lines and lines in the form of a kitten? In the form of a kitten? Market research tells us our users like cute animals. It would be really great if you could
No.
But why?
Look, I can of course draw you a cat. I'm the artist, I can give it a try. It won't be a line anymore, it'll be a cat. The line and the cat, these are two different things.
A kitten. Not a cat, but a kitten. They're little, cute, cuddly. Cats, on the other hand,
It's all the different.
Absolutely steer her out. She hasn't even finished speaking and you're already saying no.
I got the idea, but it's a possible to draw a line in the form of a cat? Dylan.
What about a verb?
So, where do we stop? What are we doing?
7 red lines, 2 with red ink, 2 with green ink, and the rest with transparent. Did I stop right?
Yes.
Excellent. In which case, that's everything, right?
Oh, Mr. Rock, we also have our red balloon. Do you know if you can inflate it?
What do I have to do with balloons?
It's red.
Anderson, can you or can you not do this? A simple question.
As such, I can, of course. But
Excellent. Organise a business trip. We'll cover the expenses, go over to their location, inflate the balloon. Well, this is very productive. Thank you all.
Can I ask you one more question, please? When you inflate the balloon, could you do it in the form of a kitten?
Of course I can. I can do anything. I can do absolutely anything. I'm an expert.
How many experts are in the room? Who wants Andessen's job? Okay. So what is happening when we don't get decent requirements? We have different sort of defects that we find, okay? For instance, functional defects, okay? This is my day-to-day business, by the way. That's when requirements haven't been done properly, I find the defects. That's my job. This one about functional defect is a wonderful one. I took French examples for most of them. This is the Ministry of Defense, and they decided to redo completely the software that was supposed to pay the soldiers. Nickname of the project Louvois, and it was a big disaster because people were paid late, their salary was miscalculated, and that's about 346 million euro that were just lost down the drain, and they couldn't do anything with that. And a big company who designed the software was there with a lawsuit and put in the newspaper and everything. Isn't it fabulous? That's what we all dream about, right? This is one of the big telco operator, and because the security requirements were a bit soft, personal data were exposed to the outside world because some clever people just went in and, steal the personal data. Big issue, newspaper, on the web, and so on and so forth. Wonderful, isn't it? Oh, this one is even better. Windows 8. Who's got Windows 8 at home? Okay, courageous, brave guys. Fantastic, yeah, okay. Do you like the interface? Well, most of the people in the beginning didn't like the interface at all because they were totally, lost in space. Where are my settings? Where is my start button? Okay? It was told by loads of users that it was even worse than Vista, who was considered as the worst operating system ever. Thank you very much, Microsoft, good deal. Okay? So if you look at all the possibilities, or many possibilities that we have, if requirements are not well done, we can face technical issues, we can face user or customer issues, one of the most forgotten part or side of the software development, by the way, usability and all these non-functional requirements. And you can, of course, find functional issues. In order to help them, or to help us in identifying and even solving before they appear these problems, we have, of course, techniques, standards, and practice, like ISTQB, RegB, or IQBBA, or even CMMI, okay? All these good practices, all this knowledge that has been gathered in order to help us avoid or find these problems are just there, okay? But still, we don't use them properly, or we don't use them at all, which is a big pity. How can we improve in structuring our requirements? And I will tell you why I want to structure my requirements later. Okay? Well, first of all, and this was my introduction word, we need to speak the same language. which is a little bit ironic as I'm speaking English and most of the people in here speak Russian, I guess. I hope you understand my English. And I hope it is not that.
Spin beneath you and scatter like ice from the spoon. How was your wound?
Baby's back when makes her fly.
Why don't you slide?
You please to know you're alive.
If you got anything in here, that's probably that you understand my English, you'd probably go to the doctor because it's absolutely meaningless. It's called word salad, okay? Why am I talking to you about this word salad at the moment? Because we are used to speak our own language within our work environment, within our company, right? And we use a lot of jargon work. Whether you are an analyst, whether you are a tester, whether you are a developer, we have our own piece of language that is, first of all, due to our kind of job, ITers. Okay, some call us geeks or nerds or whatever, okay? See what I mean? But also within the IT world, you have different disciplines, you have different kind of businesses or different kind of jobs with their own language. And the mistake that we often do is that we believe that the language we speak every day is understood by everyone. Did you ever try to come back home and speak to your family and try to explain what you're doing every day? Just do that, especially with small kids. Thank you very much. In Belgium, you're not forced to go to school, you know, that kind of preschool, and explain in face of the whole classroom and the teacher what you're doing in life. I'm a tester, you know, software, I'm trying to find defect in software, okay? Sounds wonderful, isn't it? Well, thank you very much. They spare me that one, okay? As a tester, I will tell you about my kind of job, but you have exactly the same, and I'll come to that. As a tester, we speak about, when we look at project, constraints like time, cost, and resources, which is something that everyone understands. Ain't it fabulous? But we also have our own jargon, like coverage or depth. What is test coverage? Anyone understand what test coverage exactly means? We have an idea, we have a rough idea, but what does it exactly mean? What is the definition? What does it mean to you? What does it mean to me? Is it meaning the same? How about test depth? What does test depth mean? When analysts are speaking about Moscow, it's not about the city. It's about the qualification technique. When we're talking about SWOT analysis, it's not about the special police force in the US. It's about strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threat. It's totally different. You see? So what we use every day has a meaning that we understand, but that not everyone does. Now when we are interfacing others, like management, analysts, or resources, developers, what is that box happening? Why have I got this box? HP Connection Manager. Thank you very much, HP. When developers, business analysts, and management are speaking, they're using their own language, which is different from mine, which is different from yours in most cases, right? If you want to sell testing to management, tell them about risk, tell them about benefits. Don't tell them about test coverage or test depth, because it's completely meaningless. It's not only about telling something or saying something. It's about how you say it. Let me tell you an example straight from the field. We were in a big management meeting and the project was, running bad. And a young test manager said, well, we will test the stuff and we only have 1 week to test, so we will only test for 1 week. Guess what the reactions were at the management side and on the business side? Everyone was, shaking like hell because we will only test for a week. And then you had the senior guy who came at the rescousse and just said, well, that's not exactly what we mean. Let's rephrase a little bit. We will make sure that testing will finish within a week. How do you think they would react then? It's totally different. On the second sentence, you're in control. We will make sure that the testing will fit within a week. We know what we're doing. We know how to prioritize stuff. Okay? It's totally different sort of communication, but all in all, it comes to the same. So, what I want to say in here is that you need to interface the people you're talking to with their own language, understand them, give them what they want. If you want to sell something to a manager, again, tell him about risk, tell him about benefits. Don't tell him about technique. And this is the mistake that we often do. We jump into techniques because we are ITers. And I'm the first one to be guilty. We need to make requirements that are understandable, that are understood by everyone. And I will show you later why it is so important that we make, and I did it on purpose, testable requirements. What is the difference between a requirement and a testable requirement? Well, the testable requirement can be tested, is understood by testers, is understood by quality. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, it is exactly the same, all in all, if it's well written. Because what I want to test is what you intend to design, is what the project or the product is supposed to be delivering. We want to test functionality, we want to test business processes, because we want to make sure that the software that is designed in a proper way and is delivering the benefits that it's supposed to deliver. Of course, we have ways to design requirements in a better way. We already told you about schemes in this morning, and I've seen on the program there's somebody else who is dealing with better requirements. Okay? So there are patterns that we can use like these ones. We have other techniques like the W techniques. Why the hell do you need that? What is it all about? How will it be used? Who is going to use that piece of software? Where is it going to run? Where is it going to be used? And so on and so forth. That's the W techniques. Everyone knows that. These are other kind of patterns that can help you in defining or designing proper requirements. But I'm sure that you know all that, okay? From a functional perspective, but also from a system perspective. What is the system supposed to do? And you get something, if you just follow the pattern, you get something that is quite robotic, you know. When book available, borrow book must allow subscriber, and so on and so forth, you see? But all in all, this is understandable. And this is trying to catch each and every tiny bit of the context so that nothing is left out, and we have something that is completely and extensively described. And if I have this later on, I can test it in a proper way, and I can identify each and every little bit of this requirement and make test conditions and make test cases and make whatever I need to do so as to deliver the right product just before it's issued, just before it's put in production. Oh, what I would like to do, because one of my first questions are people that are involved in this room, are there people that are involved with project management, of project direction? Yes, they were, and they are. So I suppose that you guys want to measure your project. I suppose that you want to know exactly where you are and if you're still under control with your project or not, right? If you want to do that, you need to measure. And again, I don't know the situation here in St. Petersburg, and I hope it's different from mine, but often, very often, what I see when I'm doing audits within companies is that there's a cruel absence of references. People have no reference. And it will come later on this slide, that's mainly because people don't want to learn. That's mainly because people don't want to re-inject what they've learned into the next project. And they don't know what to measure against. And if you have no reference, then you have no measurement. Okay. There are extremely few measures and metrics, sometimes none. And I'm not speaking of small companies. I'm not speaking of the groceries next door. I'm just speaking of big companies. They don't know exactly where they are and they don't measure. Who in this room has the slightest idea of the cost of a defect within their own organization? How much does a defect cost at your project? Who knows that? Who has a clue? How do you want to address a CEO? How do you want to sell quality to a CEO if you don't know how much is a defect? Hey, Mr. CEO, I'm going to sell you a big new project with a brand new tool and loads of people and resources that I'm going to consume, and there will be a huge benefit. What benefit? Well, we will find a lot of defects that you won't find later, and this will save you money. How much money? Well, I don't know exactly, but loads of money, sure. Okay, next. Okay? So, what is the coverage all about? How efficient are you? And do you learn from one project to another? Do you reincorporate what you've learned? How do you base your decisions? How do you make decisions? Based upon estimation. Let me see. Well, it's not too cloudy. The wind is coming from there. Well, 300 men days. Well, that's about 150 women days, by the way. Management cannot evaluate properly. And that's the problem. What would we like to know? And it's not only me, it's you, it's project managers. Because if you don't measure, you don't know. What do you like to know? Well, what is still to be done? Am I on track? Can I improve somewhere? What the hell is my quality? Not even the total quality, just my quality. How do I perform within my project, within my task, within my job? Oh, that one is fabulous. Do defects get solved? Most of the people think that quality control, testing, is just there to find defects. Let me tell you a big secret. 20 years of experience back, let me tell you a big secret. I don't care about finding defects. I want these defects to get solved, ladies and gentlemen. If I find 1,000 defects in a piece of software and none is solved, none is dealt with, what is my added value? Nothing. They're still there in the end of the day. So what I want is to make sure that these defects get solved, not by me, but by developers, by whoever has to solve them. It doesn't matter, but make sure that they do something with them. What did I learn? What is the lesson learned on this project? I just said this lesson learned, only one. If I just get one on every project I do, well, Jesus Christ. It's a big improvement in the end of the week. Okay? One of the biggest difficulties we meet when we're on the IT projects are clear specification. And the second part of my talk will tell you about how we solved this unclear specification stuff. Not because the analysts did a bad job, not at all, just because analysts were long gone, or because there were no analysts at all. Okay? What is really needed, actually? Within the project, do you know exactly what is important and what is not important? Or do we just fly blind? Okay? I've been in a project somewhere, and I was working on requirement structure, the one that I'm going to show you later. And I asked to the guys, business guys, okay, what is important in your project? And you know the answer? Well, everything is important. I pay for everything, so I want everything to be there and implemented. You know what I did? I just went provocative. I just took one single requirement, and I knew that it was not really important. And I said, well, I put 70% of my effort on this one. Oh, you're nuts or what? It's not possible. This is just, oh. So now you admit that this one is maybe less important than another one. So, okay, let's rewind, come back to the origin. What is important and what is not important in your project? The big question that one may ask is, if this functionality doesn't work, if this business process is not fulfilled, can I sleep well tonight? And if the answer is no, it's probably important. And if the answer is no, it is important, then you'd better test it fine. And you'd better design it fine as well. Okay? When do you know that quality control is enough? When can you verify, when can you validate that this is enough? How many of you have seen in their project stop criteria? Clear indication that you've tested enough. The quality is good enough, all in all. 1, 2, maybe 3. No, this one is taking a picture. 4. Okay, that's not a lot. Okay? When do you think this should happen? In the very beginning of the project, because this is the time where you negotiate. This is the time where you define what is the quality that I want to reach. We all know, here in this room, we all know that we won't reach 100% quality. It's not possible. Okay? We know that we'll have to negotiate and compromise here and there. But better compromise on the good stuff, and better be sure that what you deliver in the end of the day is qualitative enough. How long does it take to design or execute the test or the project? How long does it take to develop? What should we look at first? And what sort of conclusions can we draw from what we do? What I'm going to tell you now is how we solved part of the problem. And it's a wonderful toy, it's a wonderful tool that we designed. And by the way, this can be implemented anywhere, so that's not a tool that I'm going to sell. I'm selling nothing. All right? But this is just a method that we had to implement so as to cure the disease, the one that I've just shown you before. Okay? And I suppose and I hope that in the end of the day, this will help you in managing your project, in managing your quality, or in doing whatever you need to do. And by the way, I should not be proud of this because it's a totally nonsense. Because normally, there should have been good requirements at first that you guys and girls were designing, and I should just use these requirements so as to base my testing and my quality control. And why was it not there? Well, probably because you've been forgotten somewhere in the loop, not because you haven't done your job properly. I'm sure that business analysts do a brilliant job every time they are on the project. But sometimes people confuse tasks, roles, and responsibilities and misuse test analysts to make testers out of them, though they are not trained to be testers, and testers are not trained to be business analysts. And that's why I'm training my test managers to become business analysts. Not to steal your job, just to make sure that we can interface properly. All right? And you probably better have to do the same with regards to testing and with regards to requirements engineering and these kind of things. And the TRH that I'm going to talk about here is just a nonsense because we had to reinvent the wheel and the hot water because it wasn't there. Because test analysts were long gone, because requirements were fuzzy, not understandable, or not even present. You know, there are applications that are there for 20 years or so, and requirements are totally vanished, not accurate anymore, you see, not updated at all. They were written right in the beginning, but nobody took care of updating them when the legislation, regulation, the software technology evolved, and so on and so forth. So you have a big bunch of documents that are just useless. And then you do archaeology, you know, just digging into these kind of things and trying to figure out. Wonderful. So a TRH, what is a TRH? Test requirements hierarchy. Wow, sounds great. What is a test requirements hierarchy? That's requirements put in a full flat file tree view. Okay? It's looking like dinosaurs. I told you I'm not that young anymore, okay? Why? Well, you'll see why. You'll see the advantage. Aim of the game is to put requirements in a hierarchy, in a way that requirements are, you know, linked to each other. And this wonderful little piece of crap is actually the vision of your application, the vision of your software. Okay? A couple of basics. It's a tree view, so if you have the leaves, have I got a pointer yet? Wonderful, I have a pointer. These leaves are the testable requirements. So everything that is there, the end, the edge, the leaves of the tree are testable. Okay? And this fulfills 100% this. That's the aim of the game. So that you have this hierarchy. And when you test the leaves, the branch is tested, and so on and so forth. Until you climb to this one. And this one, ladies and gentlemen, is always the same. Let's bring the money in. Casa, casa. Get the cash. Okay? If you're working with non-profit organization or personal development software, whatever, I don't mind. Okay? That's your objective. If it's not money, that's fine with me as well. I don't mind. We take everything, and credit cards as well. By the way, I would love to have this business process thinking. Why am I interested in business processes? Not because I'm in this wonderful St. Petersburg with you guys, but because we develop software just for one goal, which is to sustain one's business, to sustain one's organization, to help people working more efficiently, right? So this is where the money flows. This is what is important. And I want to test against that. Because if we come to close to zero defect, or close to zero important defect within this area, it just means that your application just hit the roll and it's fantastic. It's great, it's exactly what you want. But of course, I know that I can not only deal with business and I'll have to go into functionality, so I will drill down from business processes into functionality. And this will become my quality reference. This will become my Bible. Okay? Okay, how does it help? Let me come to that. It's used about everywhere in the project. Okay? So as you see, this is a very early stage. It's no big surprise because you guys, analysts, are starting very early in the process. And this is what we, testers, would like to do as well. We would like to work together with you guys and start understanding what the business is all about as early as possible so that we can design tests by the time the application is built in a proper way. We need to understand what will be coming to us anyone familiar with the V model? Yeah. It works with Agile as well, by the way, because Agile is quite trendy at the moment. It works. That's a different scale. That's more, shorter time and, shorter approach of the model, but it works as well. No problemo. So business requirements, systems requirements, they will come to test requirements, and that's why I'm willing to do a TRH. If I can intervene here, what is happening? Sorry. If I can intervene here, while not a single line of code is even designed, I can understand what will come to me later. And that's fantastic. I want to have requirements that I use as a basis for testing. This is where we can have a good interaction together. This is why I need to have testable requirements that are unambiguous. Oh, by the way, if somebody has to design, it has to be unambiguous as well. So I suppose that developers share the same need. Okay? It has to be as complete as possible, possibly one way, not contradicting or wrong, and, well, sometimes they don't exist. And this is where and why, by the way, the TRH has been conceived some 15 years ago, because we were facing projects where requirements did not exist. So we had to reinvent the wheel. We had to organize a way where requirements are gathered from a testing perspective. Way too late in the process. Because if I come back to the V model, the code has been designed already. We were in the testing phase. So it's a little bit late to get the requirements, right? One of the problems as well is wrong or missing requirements. How can you make sure that you did not forget anything? And then we come to that method or approach. And just to give you a small example, a train ticket application. Oh, by the way, they're selling in Russia, so I just got a picture. Okay, as I told you, the first requirement is let's bring the money in. Okay? How can a company that is selling train tickets can make money? What are the main processes that a train ticket company does to make money? Well, the first one, I guess, is, and this is the major question, how? Well, sounds familiar. The first process is, of course, selling tickets. But train ticket companies are not only selling tickets, because people sometimes, want to change their ticket, and sometimes they change their mind and they just don't want to go anymore. So they want the money back because they didn't use the service. Okay? So we have three major processes. I'll make it very, very simple here because it can be much more complex than this, but so as to keep it simple, we have three main processes. Okay. And when you sell train tickets, how can you make money out of that? Well, possibly by selling train tickets to, I don't know why it's jumping this. Okay, let's go. Selling train tickets to different segments, different business categories. And first of all, you can sell train tickets to travel within Russia, but you can also sell train tickets to travel outside Russia. And by the way, if you want to travel inside Russia, I suppose that you have the same kind of segmentation as we have in France or in Belgium. You have different categories of train tickets. You have people that get a discount because they're young, because they're older or senior, because they're traveling when it's peak time, because when they're traveling when it's off-peak time, and so on and so forth. Or because they're very loyal and they travel a lot, so they get a reduction as well. Okay? So you see that your whole offer is getting up there by asking the magic question, how? Okay? This is one way to get the requirements done. Of course, asking how it's sometimes a bit difficult, because if you ask how constantly, you look like, you know, a dog barking, how. Okay, so that's not fine. So there are other ways, much more creative, to ask how. What needs to happen? Okay. Are there any related problems? You see them. Okay. Oh, by the way, I delivered the presentation on a PDF format, so if you're interested or still interested after my talk, you can just ask to get it. And if they're not helpful enough, you can just drop me a mail and you'll get it, no problem. Okay. And it's free of charge. Okay. So you can use also, because, well, by the way, I told you about techniques, but you know these techniques. You have these techniques. You master these techniques. Some of them. Okay. So that's a way to combine with the way of asking how. Oh, by the way, who are you asking to? Who are you asking how? Well, everyone that is involved within the project, every representative people that are involved in the project. So the business side, the sponsor, but also the technical side, because it can be that they have important information for you as well that you need to test. They also can sleep at night if it doesn't work fine, but not necessarily for the same reasons. Okay? So you have many, many different stakeholders that you have to identify. So as to do a 360 degrees approach to your project. And then you combine it with the classic techniques, like, you know, who can create, read, update, delete, and so on and so forth. Oh, that's wonderful. This is testing vocabulary. Do you understand that? Yes? Who does? Who does not? There are people who do not understand equivalence partitioning, so just picking one single element within a single partition so as to reduce the test cases or reduce the cases. Boundaries, I suppose that you all understand. Negative cases, it's not that I'm becoming negative, it's just that I want to make sure that the application doesn't do anything wrong. Okay. And make sure that it works 100%. By the way, there's another way to get to the structure, which is working with different kind of people, because I told you there are different stakeholders. There are different kind of people. And the question is, why? And by asking why, you climb up to the big money maker. Okay? Why do you need how and why? Because you're interfacing different sorts of people. Remember about communication. There are people who see the big picture and see the money flow one step after the other. These are the business-oriented people. But you have, of course, the IT-oriented people who just, you know, are expert in the narrow field. They just see one little stuff there, and they focus on it. But it's just in the middle of its structure. So you need to understand what is the context around that. And this is by asking why. Okay? And of course, you combine the how and why all the time so that you finally get to the structure. Of course, asking why is difficult. And you need to be creative sometimes, because why is, yeah, sometimes quite intrusive, quite provocative. So, what is the purpose? Can you explain? What business problem is it supposed to solve? And so on and so forth. What would happen if the feature was not available? Of course, you have different ways to figure out on your own how to build the structure. You have your previous knowledge or experience. If you've already worked in the telco sector, you know what telecom operators are dealing with. Okay? So you know more or less what a telco operator is all about. And you can already design a little bit, okay, based upon your previous experience. When specifications are available, there's some documentation somewhere. That is, of course, a good basis to understand what the application is all about. If you have the possibility to interview the people, face-to-face meetings are wonderful. The problem with face-to-face is that you get 10 different views if you have 10 different people. So at a certain moment in time, you have to reshuffle the whole stuff, reconcile, and send the final TRH to everyone so that it gets approved. That is exactly your everyday job as analyst. And if you're brave enough, you can lead a workshop and have everyone inside the room, provided they have time enough. And then you start, and then they can discuss and interact. It's always better because you have all the views reconciled at once. But of course, it's harder to manage. Let me tell you one little example, direct from the field, about never assume. Long ago, I was in the telco sector, and they were introducing what is called loyalty programs. So I suppose that all of you know what loyalty program is all about. You consume some goods, and because you're a good consumer, you get points, and against the points you can redeem something, so you get goods in exchange of your loyalty. Now it's everywhere, so if you go shopping, if you go to a telco operator, and your phone, whatever, you get these kind of things all the time, okay? But at the time I was dealing it with, it was brand new, okay? And I jumped into the project just in the middle. Well, it was a coincidence, but that was the case. So I just read the spec. As I said, this was my basis. I had no real previous knowledge and experience because it was a brand new product. And I started my richer analysis. And to me, it was very, very clear. It was some kind of bean counter, okay? You get points, you accumulate the points. When you get enough points, you can redeem your points and you get something in return, okay? 3 minutes, a box of chocolate, we're Belgian, whatever, okay? That's the way it goes. So I assumed at the time that this was the real goal of the application. But because we created that structure and because I believed in the approach, I decided to play it by the rules. And by the rules meant I had an interview with the stakeholders, one after the other. And the first one who entered the room was a lady, and she was the sponsor. She was the marketing manager. And believe me or not, the project nickname was King Kong, because it was huge. And I said, well, what is King Kong all about? And her answer was, it is a communication application. Well, I fell off my chair. A what? A communication application. Okay, so I have a bean counter there, and this is a communication. Can you tell me? And she told me at this moment in time, well, I don't care about the points at this moment in time. It's not very important because it's brand new, and if people complain, I'm even willing to give them 3 points if they want. It's not a problem. What I want is that I can make sure that I have the details of these persons, email address, whatever kind of profile, so that I can push more products. And these persons will be happy with their points so that they stay with us and they don't change, they don't go to competition. This was the aim of the game. And believe me or not, ladies and gentlemen, but the way the application was designed and the way the application was tested later on was totally different from what I originally thought. It was not a bean counter anymore. It was some kind of social interaction, communication application. And this makes a real difference. And that's about communication, that's about TRH. Okay. Now, okay, I sold you the structure, hopefully. Now, of course, how can you use that? Because it's wonderful to have spent some time in dealing with that, but okay, what's the use? Well, first of all, with having such a structure, I can put some priorities on it, okay? And what is it going to happen with priorities? Well, 2 things. If it's so important, it needs to be designed ASAP. Because it's important. This is where the money comes in. So I need to have it as soon as possible. And as a tester, when I get it in my test lab, I need to test it as soon as possible. Why? Because those people who are worrying about the money, they need to have their relief. They need to know that it works fine so that they can sleep at night. Because if they don't sleep at night, they're absolutely awful in meetings. So I want them to sleep at night. Okay? And by the way, if it's important, I want it to be tested more thoroughly, more in depth. I want to put more tests in there. And if it's not important, well, if time allows, I will test it. If not, it is not important anyway. So who cares? So by having these priorities, I can organize the way the application will be designed and the way the application will be tested later. This is a wonderful communication tool. Remember, all stakeholders have seen and approved this structure. So this is a one common shared vision all around the place. Whether you're a technical or business, it doesn't matter. You approve that. So this is your vision of the application, full stop. It can use to pilot, and I will show you how. It can be used to pilot the whole project. Organize your testing, organize your development. And it can be used to estimate, and I will show you how I use it as a test strategy backbone. But development goes exactly the same. Okay, so this is how it integrates with the documentation. We all know that we have plenty of documentation with our projects, right? Especially within the agile sector now. Okay, we love documentation, we love paper. Okay, let's move. This is an excerpt of a TRH. For each and every requirement, testable requirement, remember the leaves of the trees, okay? I will write one or more design test specification. Okay? These are my tests. This is how I'm going to make sure that this application reaches its goal. Right? How extensive? It's not a question, no matter. You want to do it light, you want to do it detailed, it's another discussion, it's another debate. I'm sure they want to have it with you, but not here, not now. Okay? But what is for sure is that for each and every requirement, I will write one or more test designs so that I'll make sure that each and every testable item is tested. But remember, we have priorities. So there's a sequence. There's a way to organize the whole damn stuff. Okay? A little bit of methodology. TRH goes there, and I put my designs into two different phases. One that is logical, and describing very high level what the process is all about and how it will be tested, or what are the sub-items of the process. Why do I want it to be logical? Because, back to my example, train application, okay? In a train application, you have different ways to sell train tickets. It can be at the counter, if you go to the station. It can be in an automatic booth, where you can, just interact, or it can be on the web. So, logical design is independent of the implementation. I can describe how the application works and how it will be tested, totally independent of the implementation. When I enter there, I use data, validation points, which are the tests, by the way, and scenarios. And this is implementation specific. This part, physical design, is really linked to the implementation that you choose. Okay? Why am I talking about that? Because this is another way to anticipate. You can perfectly do these steps, before any single line of code is written. Because you don't need to have the code. You don't even know what the implementation is all about, but it doesn't matter. Because it's just describing the application and the way it works. And when the code is available, then you can define this. So this is a way to split your workload and anticipate a little bit, meaning shifting left on the project. How do I pilot with such? Well, I have my testable requirements, the leaves of my trees. I can count them, so I know the number of testable requirements. And because I have the number of testable requirements, then I can infer, based upon the real work that is done, what is going on. I can see how many requirements have been identified, how many of them have been developed by the development team, and how many of them has been written by the testing team. Okay? So I have an idea on my progress just because I have this structure. I can get percentage of coverage. You know, how much do I cover today with my testing, with my development? How much of the application that is put in a flat file structure, how much of this has been worked out already, and how much is not? I can, of course, see the progress, because if I do execute some tests, I have 100 testable requirements, I executed 50, so I'm about halfway. And of course, I can evaluate the risk and impact before and after execution, but I can also plan. And planning is something like this. I have 100 requirements to test or to design. I have 100 person days within my budget. So it means that within a day, one single day, I have to write my design and I have to execute it. Oh, and by the way, I have to execute it once or twice or 3 times till it gets solved. Never forget that, okay? And usually for manual testing, the balance is 60-40. So 60% of my time will be in analyzing. That's traditional kind of project. If you go agile, it's totally different story. If you go automated, it's totally different story. Doesn't matter. Just put the right figure on there. Okay? It gives me a clear indication on the quality. 50% requirements coverage. So half of my requirements have been covered by tests. 50% of past product means that half of them, so 20% in total, 50-50, right? 50% of the product passed. Okay? And have we got gray zones? Yes, loads of. What is the gray zone? This is where we don't know. This is what we haven't tested yet. This is what we haven't developed yet. These are the gray zones. This is what we have forgotten. This will only occur after all. Is it a matter of tool? This wonderful, well, I suppose you find it wonderful, I hope so. Otherwise I just, missed my target. This wonderful tool is not really a tool as such of them. You don't need a tool to implement it. You just need whatever you have at work. Okay? You want to get a commercial tool? No problem. There are many of them. Okay? But you can use Excel or you can use any other kind of implementation. It doesn't matter. The structure and the concept do. Some are easier because they are structured in a certain way, but you can perfectly, I'm sure, interface with what you already get. If you use doors, if you use TestLink, if you use whatever. Okay, good. Can be integrated, can be open source, can be whatever you like. Okay? Most of them are good. And tools is definitely not the problem. Okay? What is important is that they give you what you want, which is real-time share and follow, information and reporting, and can help you in deciding and anticipating. Of course, you have to make sure that it works with your organization. Again, don't use the standard settings. It won't work. Okay? So this is how it looks like in Word. Word is fabulous for the numbering. Okay? This is how it looks like in mind mapping. This is how it looks like in Excel. And you see that you can put, of course, loads of comments there and loads of follow-up. Okay? Just adapt to your project. Please make sure that whatever solution you choose, it is sustainable, it is robust enough. Otherwise, if it crashes in the middle, not really good. Okay? Again, tailor it. Make sure that you find synergy. I've seen so many times during audit, customers and suppliers using 2 different systems and having to re-encode everything twice. Defects, requirements, whatever. Just because one has a commercial tool and the other not. Something like that. From the requirements approach, you can evaluate your program, you can evaluate your piece of software, you can evaluate your project. Okay? Number of requirements, how are they spread over severity, over priority, over version, and so on and so forth. What is the test depth, number of scenarios per requirements? How many requirements have been changed all around? Okay? This is the high-level view. This is how you evaluate your project when you start, when you don't know, when you haven't got a clue on how much time it will really take to do the job. Then you climb one level down, which is the testing, which is the design, whatever, okay? And you have exactly the same metrics, but this is, the fine view compared to the coarse one. This is used to follow up your project on a daily basis. Exactly the same. Okay. Of course, testers love defects, so we can link defects to requirements. Oh, by the way, very important to mention, severity and priority are totally different notions. I've seen somewhere somebody saying, well, severity and priority just combine in one indicator. No way. Severity is how much does it impact. Priority is when do you want to get it. It's not the same. Oh, just very quickly, because I see that time is running out, and I thought I had more time than what they allow me. Yeah, okay, no problem. Strategy, okay? Well, I'm just an engineer, so I use linear curves. I know that this is normally an F-curve if you like to have this complex math so as to fit in your project, no problem. But all in all, this is how I see a project. You see, you have a certain scope, which is a number of requirements that you have to implement or test, and you have a certain deadline, which is the time box you're allowed before it goes to production, okay? So this is when you get it, where it is, sorry. Yeah, this is where you get it, this is where you have to release, and in between, time is yours. Ain't it fabulous? And at a certain moment in time, you just check with that method or any other, and you see that, it's not going fine. So what do? Well, you have different possibilities, of course. And again, this can also be evaluated because you have the requirements and because you know how long it takes to do the atomic tasks. So you can very, very easily give management a clue on how much would you slip if you're not meeting the deadline at a certain moment in time. And by the way, you can also give them a hint about the risk they take, because when you cross the line, you can only cover 66%. 66% of what you originally thought was the scope, okay? And this is where I come back to priorities. If you can only test 66% of what you originally thought, then you'd better test the right ones. You'd better make sure that you test what is important first. Okay? Oh, there's a third way, which is increase productivity. It's called over hours. It's called give them two computers, one to execute and one to design. It's these kind of methods. Okay? Yeah, I know. We can mitigate these options. Okay? And option 3, which is getting quicker to the point, doesn't always work. Okay? You can take 2 women, 4 months and a half, and you won't get a baby. It might be fun. I tried it for you, but it doesn't work. Nah, not serious. Okay? I'll skip this example because it's maybe I'm running out of time now. I'll just do it short. What is clear is that you can combine these examples and you can do something like this. And something like this is estimating the time it will take to retest and to complete the test objectives within the application. So we have a bunch of defects that are coming from a previous phase, especially if you're working agile, so that's coming from previous sprints, sorry. We export some defects because not everything is covered every time, so we export defect to a next phase. And in between, we have to deal with a couple of defects that are set to be fixed, and then we have to retest. And because we have this kind of requirements-based stuff, and because we also have what happened in the past, we monitor the time. then we can anticipate and evaluate how long it will take to do the next test campaign and so on and so forth. And we can come to how to complete the project within sovereign runs. An extra stuff that you can add to the structure is time. It's not if you have time, well, you have all the time in the world. It's if you measure time. And there are two times that you can measure. The time that passes by, which is pretty easy to measure, but also the time that people spend on different activities. And then it tells you how effective and efficient you are. Okay. This is also, together with the structure, a way to anticipate and evaluate how long your project will take, all in all. And then you have this kind of very refined kind of metrics, especially if you use them as top criteria when testing is enough, which is the mean time between failure, mean time between errors, and so on and so forth. It's no piece of cake. Time is difficult to get, especially when you're dealing with the time that people spend on different activities. And I'm sure that you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's what I mean, resource metrics. Oh, wonderful, isn't it? This is the kind of graph that you can build. Please, if you're reporting, do not overperform, because you give them the hand, they want the arm. Okay? So make sure that you do the right reporting. If you do too much, they will ask even more and more. And you end up the day in, just reporting. I'm nearly close to that. Okay, so I'm not a tester, I'm a business analyst. I'm not a business analyst, I'm a tester. Who cares? We are all in the same boat, ladies and gentlemen. We all share the same vision, hopefully, of the application. We all share the same goal, which is delivering something that is qualitative enough and supporting one's business. On time, on budget, and on quality, hopefully. You can use that sort of approach all together with the quality control team so as to have the total view, the comprehensive view on the whole project. And you can use the same tool all along the project. Then you can follow what everyone understands, the added value and the business means. You are responsible to define what the business value and the added value and the business means are. And we are responsible to test it. We are on the same boat, all in all. And bring the missing link to life. What I call the missing link is, you know how a project works usually. You have these business people, and they are just sitting in a table at a restaurant, and they just write down some requirements in the corner of the napkin. And they make a small paper ball at a certain moment in time, and they drop it to the IT world at a certain moment. And as long as the ball reaches the IT world, they start building a big wall. Why do they want to build a wall? Because they don't want to be disturbed by silly questions. And you might expect that the IT world, the ITers, would try to break the wall for asking the questions. And actually what they do is they build another layer because they want to use their brilliant technology and they don't want to be disturbed and they don't want to be questioned about their choices and so on and so forth. And at a certain moment in time, they come to something that is what they consider to be usable enough, and they just throw it on the other side of the wall. And then it's the big shock. Because business people have been promised the moon, they've been charged for the galaxy, and they just got a non-working asteroid. That's the crisis. Thank you very much indeed.
Okay, guys, any questions?
You're saying it's the most important goal is not to find bugs, but to make sure they get fixed. So
Sure. 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 And there are two angles to look at. First of all, from the start, that is the business analysis. So we have to make sure that the requirements are good, are understandable, are clear enough, so that they can be understood by the development. And the development needs to put each and every method and measure in place so that they develop right with whatever sort of technique, standards, norms, whatever. And then it comes to the QA department or the QC department, and then we have to make sure that it's tested thoroughly so that what is put in production, is good enough and decent enough. But all in all, I fully agree with you, and this is what I said. I don't care about defects. If nobody does anything with the defects I find, I quit. As simple as that. I have no added value. Defects must get solved. You're welcome.
Another question, probably more will affect the requirements. How do you actually test requirements? And do you actually test requirements? Because it's not regular practice. I see that when the test is involved in real phases, and go on these panels, and actually every person goes into development.
I fully agree with you again. Unfortunately, requirements are not tested very often. Well, there are ways to test requirements. Well, first of all, there are techniques so as to make good requirements, which is already kind of error prevention. And there are good ways to test requirements as well. And this is why we develop these kind of schemes and why we try to have these reviews, techniques, walkthrough, whatever. You have hundreds of ways that have been defined years ago, by the way, by all professional testers and so on and so forth. But still, that part of reviews and so on and so forth is not fully integrated within the companies, within the industry. And that's a real pity, because most of the defects come from requirements and come from these unclear specifications. That might be up to 30-40% if you refer to literature about that. Yeah. Welcome.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for the very interesting question.
Thank you.
At the beginning you said that there are two questions of vision on the requirements. The first one is the functional view,
Yeah.
and another one from the system point of view.
Uh-huh.
So, for example, if I will try to provide these system requirements to the business, let's say for this configure.
Yep.
So the question, who is responsible? Do you mean, the first question, do you mean that we have to have two versions, written version of the requirements? And the second question, who is responsible to match the requirements, functional and system?
Okay. Okay, so that's a very interesting question indeed. Actually, the two visions have to be reconciled at a certain moment in time. The problem, it's all about communication again, and this is exactly what I pointed out in my talk. Business requirements or functional requirements are easy to understand by a certain category of people who are business oriented. The other ones are more technical oriented, and this is why we have a different pattern, by the way, because we're dealing with machines and machine interaction, not really human interaction. And then, well, I would tend to say that the persons who are responsible of these ones are the ones who are impacted by these ones, the one who suffer the pain if these ones are not well written. And that might be the exploitation team, the production team, for instance, because if it's not monitorable, well, they don't know what's going on with the application from a technical point of view. Well, business users don't care whether they can monitor if the application is up and running and so on and so forth. They just want the application to be up and running. If it's monitorable, who cares? That's none of their concern. So you have to interface different kind of jobs, different kind of roles and responsibilities within the whole company, so as to make sure that you gather the full view, the 360 view. And that's what I said with the TRH as well. If you just build the TRH with the main stakeholders, with the business side, well, you get a view on the application, but you totally miss another part. And that's where the difficulty lies. And this is where you guys have a big added value, because you have to be a little bit, stretched in between IT and business, like we testers do as well, by the way, so as to make sure that both aspects, both visions can come together and at a certain moment in time match and fit into one another. And this is where the add value is for your profession and mine as well. Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I want to test my understanding of the process.
Mm-hmm.
I, as a business analysis, write business requirements.
Yes.
After it, testers write their own test requirements. Is it right?
That's when it doesn't work fine. When it does work fine, we should be together, or you should be writing requirements that are good enough for me. Or I should find your good requirements so that I can use them. So if the system doesn't work fine, okay, I have to infer the requirements from somewhere else. Okay? Maybe you weren't there to write the requirements. Maybe these requirements have been written long ago and are not up to date. Maybe you don't have time at a certain moment to give me this information. Maybe the information is not documented precisely enough, so requirements are not understandable. Okay? And this is when I had to recreate that silly tool because I had to reinvent the wheel. But this is not the process I would like to have. The process that I would like to have is that at a certain moment in time, we are in the same room, not all day. I'm not a business analyst, or I don't pretend that I want to be a business analyst. But I want to make sure that what is designed by you guys is good enough so that I can use it later and do my testing. And then I don't have to write these requirements again. I just need to write my designs, and I just need to write my tests. And this is where we can share the value. This is where we can contribute.
Process. In the process of development of solution,
Yep.
I, as a business analyst, write business requirements.
Yes.
After you, do you need to write your test requirements?
No.
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 So good business requirements is enough to test the process.
Yes. 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 Let me tell you again, I have a dream. My dream is that I come together at a certain moment in time in the beginning of the project. I hear what you're doing. I hear how you elicit your requirement and you make good business requirements. I just grab them and I put my testing framework all around it. And that's it. And this is your job, this is my job, and this is perfect. Okay? What I'm facing today is, for some reason, and again, there's not putting the blame at anyone, right? For some reason, this is not working. Because testers are not invited up front, because, well, we're just forgotten somewhere, because requirements are not good enough, because, yeah, they're outdated, because they're not there anymore. I've seen companies, I've been recently auditing a bank, and this company is developing very, very complex products, okay? And at a certain moment in time, I said, well, what is my basis? Where is my documentation? And you know what they said? Well, we had a paper documentation dating 30 years back, right? Okay? They had this, and then they added some layer on top, okay? But the layers were sometimes contradicting each other because some regulation in the banking system has changed, or the application has changed, or some functionalities were added. And what I have to do now is to go 30 years back, get the whole pile on top, squeeze it until I get, you know, the juice out of that, and make sure that I understand how the application works today. This is reality. And I can give you many examples like this. And the requirements that were written 30 years ago were excellent. That's not a problem, but they're just outdated. They're just meaningless. Because nobody took care of updating.
So this tool is created because there was no business requirements.
Yeah, this is the origin of the tool. It has been written and it has been designed and it has been sold because we had to reinvent the wheel. Now what I'm saying is, it is not the only usage. If we can work together, I extract your requirement, put it directly into the tool, and the trick is done. And I don't need to reinvent the wheel because you invent it for me, and that's great. It's fabulous. This is my dream. You're welcome.
Any other questions?
It's a little drop of the criticism here. For me, you're saying never assume
Yes.
finance is all about communications and everything. For me, never assuming sounds like the intention to avoid responsibility.
No.
Someone will assume at some point. Sometimes it will be tech lead, sometimes it will be business analyst, sometimes it will be the customer himself. You don't ask everything, you don't ask customer everything. You don't ask business analyst everything. It's like, I'd like to suggest you to change never assume with check what you're assuming.
Oh, then we totally agree. I have no problem with that. That was exactly my reply. It's not never assume, it's indeed check what you assume. The problem is assuming and not checking. Fully agree, no problem. I take the criticism. I think we understood each other, no problem.
Okay, the next question.
How much do requirements cost? I mean, by experience, what tests or used to develop requirements?
I have a fabulous answer to this one. It depends. It depends on the project, it depends on the methodology that you're, well, if you go for agile methodology, it will not cost at all the same as if you go for traditional kind of method. It really depends. It costs a lot of money. It costs a lot of money. That's all I can say. Oh, there are, by the way, some kind of answers. If you go to Capers Jones and these kind of things, you have some, yeah, kind of facts and figures, but it's heavily depending.
I'd like to ask about, you mentioned stop criteria for testing.
Yes.
In your experience, have you had something different than just time? So, for example, you have 5 days to complete your actions, and you just make the most important ones. That's it. Something else. Have you had in your practice?
Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, of course. Remember my presentation, remember the slide about communication. The only value that we share are cost and time, hopefully, and resource that is linked, okay? This is exactly what I want to avoid as a tester, because I don't want to be said, you stop testing because there's no money back, and you stop testing because there's no time left, okay? So these are, to me, the most awful test criteria, stop criteria at all, okay? So that's what I want to avoid. And what I want to get as stop criteria is something like coverage, when enough of the application has been covered. The quality level of the application that has been discussed up front, very, very early in the project, has been reached. For instance, there's no more critical defects open, 80% of the application or the test scope has been covered. Well, these kind of things, these are good stop criteria. These are better stop criteria. You can even use, if you're major enough and if you have enough knowledge of the company and the way projects are run, you can even use the mean time between failures and mean time between errors as a guideline so as to stop. But you need a certain maturity in there and a certain knowledge in there as well. But these are better stop criteria. I surely want to avoid these kind of cost and time stop criteria. But unfortunately, these are the ones that come back every time because this is something that everyone understands and everyone cares about. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm trying to just wrap my head around your saying it's some sort of body to make sure things get resolved. But then my idea goes as testing is done in the wrong way. We should do assurance before it's implemented.
Yeah, but it doesn't prevent testing. I do agree with you. No.
But most values
I have no problem with what you say, but let's do both, right? Because build quality in is something that developers tell me every day. Well, we develop, right, so there's no defects. Okay, come get some.
What's your vision on how to arrange the quality assurance to make sure it's good? The second test is more about making sure we've done the job right in the first place.
Well, first of all, you need to involve the people as early as possible. You need to have these kind of reviews and so on and so forth before you implement. That's actually, and independent of the methodology or the method that you use or the life cycle that you want to use, well, this is exactly what is described in the V model. The V model has all these kind of steps described extensively, but the problem is that we skip most of them. We rush into let's code, and then we drop it to the tester and let's say, well, if you find some, come get. And we found a lot, actually, and these are way too late because normally we should have prevented. So fully agree with the principle, but at this moment in time, I'm not sure that most of the organizations have enough maturity to go into that track. And it doesn't prevent to have a quality control, whatever. You have a dream. I share it with you, no problem.